My beloved child, listen closely, because your soulmate is standing at the edge of a decision that even they never imagined they would make. For a long time, they have been trying to behave as though everything inside them is perfectly calm. They have continued with ordinary conversations, ordinary routines, ordinary days, while privately carrying one extraordinary thought about you. But something has changed. One small detail connected to you has affected them more deeply than they expected, and now the person who once believed they could simply wait is beginning to reconsider everything. Stay with this moment, because the surprising part is not merely what they are preparing to do, it is why they suddenly feel they cannot remain where they are emotionally. Your soulmate recently experienced a moment that brought your presence into their mind with unusual clarity. Maybe it was a memory. Maybe someone casually mentioned something connected to you. Maybe they saw something that reminded them of the way you speak, the way you carry yourself, or the energy you bring into a room. Whatever triggered it, their reaction surprised even them. They stopped. They thought about you longer than they intended. And then came the question they had been avoiding: what if I keep waiting and miss the moment I was supposed to act? That question changed the atmosphere completely. Because now, what once seemed impossible is beginning to feel necessary. They are considering doing something so unexpected, so unlike their usual behavior, that someone close to them may soon wonder what has gotten into them. But there is one detail they have not told anyone yet, and when you hear what that detail represents, the entire story begins to make sense. Here is where everything becomes more interesting. Your soulmate has apparently been rehearsing something privately, not necessarily exact words, but a moment. They have imagined what it would feel like to finally stop hiding behind hesitation and let you see a side of them that has remained carefully protected. Think about that. This is someone who may normally calculate everything before making an emotional move. They think about timing. They think about reactions. They imagine every possible outcome before choosing one direction. Yet when it comes to you, that familiar strategy is beginning to collapse. Why? Because your influence has created a strange contradiction inside them. You make them want to be careful, but you also make them want to be courageous. And courage is slowly winning. Something about your recent energy has convinced them that you are entering a different chapter of your own life. They sense that you are no longer standing still. They feel that your attention is becoming more selective, your standards clearer, your future more important to you. Whether they have heard this from another person or simply noticed it themselves, it has awakened something powerful in them. Suddenly, waiting feels different. Suddenly, silence feels expensive. And suddenly, the possibility that your life could move forward without them occupying the place they secretly imagined has become impossible to ignore. This is why their next move could look crazy from the outside. Not because it is reckless. Not because it is negative. But because it may completely contradict the version of themselves everyone expects. The quiet person may finally speak. The hesitant person may become surprisingly certain. The person who always waits for perfect timing may decide that perfect timing was never going to arrive. But hold on to this, because their decision is connected to one particular thing about you, and it is probably not the thing you would guess first. What affected them most was not simply your appearance, your words, or even one specific interaction. It was the realization that you seem capable of continuing your journey whether they step forward or not. That realization landed differently. Your soulmate may have secretly assumed there would always be more time. Another opportunity. Another conversation. Another convenient moment somewhere in the future when everything would magically become easier. But recently, something challenged that assumption. Perhaps they noticed you becoming more confident. Perhaps someone told them something positive about your plans. Perhaps they simply understood that a person like you cannot remain emotionally parked forever waiting for someone else to decide what they want. And that is when their thoughts began moving faster. Imagine someone close to them asking, "Why are you suddenly doing this?" Your soulmate might smile, change the subject, or pretend it is nothing important. But privately, they know the answer. You are the reason. More precisely, the possibility of losing an opportunity with you is the reason. And there is something beautiful underneath that realization. They are beginning to understand that meaningful connections cannot survive forever on unspoken intentions. At some point, intention must become action. At some point, someone must become brave enough to change the pattern. Stay a little longer, because this is where their crazy idea starts taking shape. They are not merely thinking about sending an ordinary message or making another predictable gesture. They want the moment to feel different. Memorable. Personal. Something that communicates, without needing 1,000 explanations, "I finally stopped overthinking this." They have considered creating a surprise, arranging an unexpected meeting, revealing something they have kept private, or making a sincere gesture that immediately tells you this is no longer casual hesitation. Yet even that is not the biggest revelation. Because there is another person who may already know that something is changing. That person noticed your soulmate behaving differently before your soulmate admitted anything. Maybe they caught them smiling at the wrong moment. Maybe they noticed them repeatedly returning to the same subject. Maybe your name appeared naturally in conversations where nobody expected it. Eventually, this person asked the question your soulmate had been trying not to answer: "Is this because of them?" Silence followed. And sometimes silence reveals more than words ever could. Your soulmate did not need to explain everything. Their reaction was enough. But then this third person said something that stayed in your soulmate's mind: "If this matters that much, why are you still pretending it doesn't?" That sentence may have been the final push. Because suddenly your soulmate saw themselves from the outside. They realized how much energy they had spent trying to look unaffected while being deeply affected. How many imaginary conversations they had carried privately. How many times they almost moved closer, then convinced themselves to wait. And here comes the twist: the crazy thing they are considering may not be extravagant at all. Its power comes from how emotionally unusual it is for them. They may finally tell the truth without hiding behind vague language. They may unexpectedly show up with clarity. They may reveal that they remember tiny details about you that you assumed nobody noticed. They may admit that one ordinary moment between you became extraordinary in their memory. And they may finally explain why they have behaved inconsistently, why they seemed close one moment and distant the next. It was not necessarily because their feelings disappeared. It may have been because those feelings became stronger than they knew how to handle. But something has shifted now. They are becoming less interested in protecting themselves from uncertainty and more interested in discovering what could happen if they finally become genuine with you. And now comes the detail that changes the meaning of everything. Your soulmate is not preparing this move simply because they miss you. They are doing it because they have started imagining a future in which you are no longer just someone they think about, you are someone they intentionally choose to make space for. That distinction is enormous. Thinking about someone requires nothing. Choosing them requires courage, consistency, and action. Your soulmate is beginning to understand that. Somewhere inside them, an old version of the story is ending. The story where they could postpone everything. The story where they could wait indefinitely for certainty. The story where you would somehow always remain exactly where they last left you emotionally. They now recognize that you are growing, moving, becoming, and building a life that will not wait for anyone's indecision. And strangely, instead of pushing them away, that realization is pulling something stronger out of them. This is why their next action may surprise you. It could happen in a way that feels almost too perfectly timed, during an ordinary day, after an unexpected conversation, or precisely when you have stopped wondering what they will do next. But remember the deeper message here: whatever happens, your worth does not depend upon someone finally choosing to act. Keep moving toward the life that feels true to you. Keep becoming stronger without becoming closed. Keep your standards without losing your softens. Because the most powerful part of this story is not that somebody may finally make an unexpected move because of you. It is that your growth has become impossible to overlook. And somewhere, your soulmate has finally understood something they should have understood much earlier. If they want a meaningful place in your next chapter, they cannot keep standing outside the story hoping the door stays open forever. They will have to step forward differently. They will have to become clearer. And the one thing they are preparing to reveal may finally explain why they have been thinking about you far more than you ever realized. Something even more unexpected is beginning to happen inside your soulmate, because the decision you just heard about is no longer only an idea they visit when they are alone. It is becoming a plan. And that difference matters. An idea can disappear tomorrow. A plan begins creating details. Your soulmate has started thinking about when, where, and how they could finally make this moment happen without turning it into another unfinished attempt. They have imagined your expression. They have wondered whether you would immediately understand what they were trying to say. They have even questioned whether you might already know more about their feelings than they ever intended to reveal. But one thought keeps returning stronger than all the others: what if they have been waiting for clarity from me too? That possibility has completely changed their perspective. Suddenly, they are remembering moments they once dismissed as ordinary. A certain look. A certain conversation. A strange silence where both of you seem to understand something without saying it. Details that seemed meaningless at the time are returning with new importance. And your soulmate is beginning to wonder whether the connection was speaking long before either of you knew how to describe it. But stay close, because something happened recently that made them stop treating those memories like coincidence. Someone mentioned you in a conversation, and your soulmate reacted differently than expected. They tried to remain casual, but the person speaking noticed. There was a pause. A change in expression. A sudden interest in information that should have been ordinary. And that person walked away knowing one thing with surprising certainty: your soulmate still cares far more than they admit. Then came a question your soulmate was not prepared to hear. If this person matters to you so much, what exactly are you waiting for? For a few seconds, your soulmate had no answer. They could have blamed timing. They could have mentioned uncertainty. They could have said life was complicated. But none of those explanations felt completely true anymore. Deep inside, they knew the real answer. They had been waiting because action would make everything real. As long as feelings remained private, they could control the story. They could imagine possibilities without facing an actual response. They could protect the connection in their mind without discovering what it could become in reality. But your soulmate is beginning to understand something powerful. Sometimes the greatest opportunity is hidden behind the conversation you are most nervous to begin. And this realization is creating a completely different version of them. The person who once analyzed every possibility is beginning to think, maybe I don't need to know exactly what happens afterward. Maybe I only need to know that what I feel deserves honesty. That is the crazy part nobody around them expected. They may be preparing to abandon their usual emotional rules. They may stop waiting for every circumstance to align. They may do something spontaneous enough that even they will look back afterward and wonder where that courage came from. Yet there is another layer. Your soulmate does not simply want your attention. They want you to understand something about their previous silence, because they fear you may have interpreted it completely differently. What you might have seen as distance, they may have experienced as internal confusion. What you might have interpreted as indifference could have been someone trying desperately to understand why one person had become so difficult to forget. And now your soulmate is realizing that silence creates its own story when nobody explains it. They have begun wondering what story you created about them. Did you assume they forgot? Did you decide they never cared deeply enough? Did you eventually stop expecting anything because their actions never matched the intensity hidden inside them? These questions are affecting them more than they expected. Because for the first time, they are seeing the connection through your eyes instead of only through their own. Imagine caring about someone while giving them almost no evidence they can safely believe. That contradiction is becoming uncomfortable for your soulmate. And here is where the next revelation appears. They may want to correct that misunderstanding in one unforgettable moment. Not through a dramatic performance, but through something unmistakably sincere. They want to say or do something that makes you realize, so this is what was happening all along. Perhaps they will reveal a memory they never forgot. Perhaps they will explain why they disappeared emotionally at certain moments. Perhaps they will admit that they repeatedly started conversations in their mind but never found the courage to begin them in reality. Whatever form it takes, the intention behind it is becoming clearer. They do not want another half-finished moment with you. They want one moment where nothing important is left hidden. But wait, because there is a detail your soulmate has been keeping even from the person who encouraged them to act. They have already imagined what comes after the first conversation. That means this is bigger than temporary emotion. Somewhere in their private thoughts, they have pictured you becoming part of future experiences they have not even lived yet. A place they want to visit someday, you appeared in the picture. A milestone they hope to reach, you were somehow standing beside it. An ordinary evening years from now, their imagination placed your presence there without permission. That realization startled them. They asked themselves why their mind kept including you in scenes that had nothing to do with the past. And the answer was simple but enormous. Perhaps their feelings were never only about what happened between you. Perhaps they were about what could still happen. That is when everything became serious. Your soulmate understood that they were not merely holding on to a memory, they were protecting a possibility. And possibilities have expiration points when nobody acts upon them. Life moves. People grow. Circumstances change. New doors appear. Your soulmate knows they cannot ask the universe to freeze your journey while they gather courage forever. So now they are preparing themselves differently. They are becoming more willing to accept whatever truth comes from genuine communication because uncertainty has finally become heavier than honesty. And there is something else they may have decided: if they step forward, they want to do it fully. No confusing signals. No pretending the conversation means less than it does. No immediately retreating behind emotional walls. For perhaps the first time, they want you to meet the version of them that stops hiding. And this is where their supposedly crazy decision becomes something much deeper. The real surprise may not be the gesture itself. The real surprise may be how completely different your soulmate behaves once they finally make it. Imagine expecting hesitation and receiving certainty. Imagine expecting a casual conversation and hearing something they have carried privately for far longer than you knew. Imagine discovering that a tiny moment you barely remember became one of the memories they returned to whenever they questioned what they truly wanted. Your soulmate is moving toward that kind of honesty. But your story does not require you to chase this moment or force it into existence. Continue becoming who you are becoming. Let actions speak louder than imagined possibilities. If someone wants a meaningful place in your life, allow consistency to reveal the truth. Because your soulmate's biggest realization is not simply that they care about you. It is that caring silently cannot build what courage might create. And there is one final thought now pushing them closer to their decision. They have started wondering whether you are about to enter a new chapter where their hesitation will no longer have room. That possibility has awakened something they cannot easily put back to sleep. Somewhere, perhaps sooner than expected, an ordinary moment could suddenly become the moment they choose differently. And when they finally reveal what they have been planning, you may discover that the crazy thing was never the surprise, the message, or the unexpected gesture. The truly surprising thing was how long they had been imagining a future conversation with you, and the one specific promise they have quietly made to themselves about what they will do if they finally get that chance.